It was supposed to be just another routine drive. Mark Reynolds had been a long-haul trucker for over 15 years, and he knew the highways of Nevada like the back of his hand. That night, he was hauling a load through the most desolate stretch of Highway 50, often called the loneliest road in America. He had heard stories, truckers whispering about strange lights, missing persons, and eerie voices calling from the empty desert, but Mark wasn't the kind to believe in ghost stories. He chalked it up to exhaustion, overactive imaginations, and the occasional desert mirage. The night was pitch black, the only light coming from his truck's high beams cutting through the darkness. The desert stretched endlessly on either side, an ocean of sand and scrubland beneath the cold glow of the moon. The radio played softly, the crackling sound of an old country tune filling the cabin. He was halfway through his shift, planning to stop at a gas station a few miles up when he saw it, a detour sign in the middle of the road. That was odd. There hadn't been any mention of road work on his usual route. He slowed down, his headlights illuminating the reflective sign. The arrow pointed towards a narrow, unmarked road leading into the desert. Mark hesitated, but then figured it was probably a temporary reroute. With a sigh, he turned onto the path, the tires kicking up dust as he drove forward. The road was rough, uneven, and unsettlingly quiet. After about 20 minutes of driving, he started feeling uneasy. The headlights illuminated only more of the same: barren land, skeletal bushes, and the occasional twisted Joshua tree. His GPS had stopped working, displaying nothing but a spinning loading icon. His phone, too, had no signal. He checked his radio, but all he got was static. A shiver ran down his spine. The feeling of isolation, of something unseen watching him, grew heavier with each passing second. He rolled down his window, listening, but the only sound was the distant wail of the wind. Then, he saw it, an old gas station up ahead, its neon sign flickering weakly. Relief washed over him. At least he wasn't completely alone. He pulled into the lot, noticing how eerily abandoned the place looked. The pumps were old, rusted, and looked like they hadn't been used in decades. The station's windows were covered in grime, and the door hung slightly ajar. Mark stepped out of the truck, the ground crunching beneath his boots as he approached the entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of mildew and dust. The shelves were half empty, lined with outdated products. A small bell jingled as he stepped in, but no one appeared behind the counter. He walked up, tapping the old rusted bell on the counter. "Hello?" His voice echoed unnaturally. No response. Something about the silence felt wrong. He glanced towards the back of the store, where a dim hallway led to what appeared to be an employee area. The lights flickered, casting strange, shifting shadows on the walls. He should have turned around and left, but something compelled him to look. As he stepped forward, he heard it, a faint whisper, just behind him. His breath hitched. He spun around, expecting to see someone. Nothing. The store was empty. Then, from the far end of the hallway, the whispering grew louder. It wasn't a single voice, but many, overlapping, distorted, as if carried by the wind. His skin crawled as he took a slow step back. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. His breath came out in visible puffs. And then, the lights cut out. Pitch black. His heart pounded in his chest. He fumbled for his phone, but as soon as he switched on the flashlight, he saw them. Shadows, shifting along the walls, twisting unnaturally. They weren't cast by anything. They were moving on their own. A guttural growl echoed through the store, reverberating in his bones. Something was there. Something that should not exist. Mark bolted. He sprinted out of the gas station, heart hammering as he leaped into his truck, slamming the door shut. His fingers trembled as he twisted the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. His headlights flickered, just for a second, and in that brief moment, he saw them. Dozens of figures, standing just beyond the light's reach. Tall, emaciated, their eyes hollow and staring, their mouths stretched unnaturally wide, as if screaming without sound. He slammed his foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires screeching against the cracked pavement. The figures didn't move. They just watched as he tore away from the station, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel. His breath came in ragged gasps as he checked his mirrors. The road stretched behind him, empty. But the sense of being followed never faded. He pushed the truck faster, determined to put as much distance between himself and that nightmare as possible. And then, the headlights caught something ahead. Another gas station, identical to the one he had just escaped from. His stomach dropped. He slowed the truck, dread creeping up his spine. His mind reeled. Had he somehow looped back around? That was impossible. He had driven straight, hadn't he? As he sat frozen in disbelief, a flickering movement caught his eye. The neon sign buzzed weakly, casting brief glimpses of the station's entrance. The door was ajar, and standing in the doorway was himself, his exact reflection. Same clothes, same expression of wide-eyed horror. But the thing in the doorway wasn't just a reflection. It smiled. A slow, grotesque smile that stretched far beyond human limits. Mark slammed the truck into reverse, his screams lost in the deafening roar of the engine. But no matter how far he drove, how fast he went, the road never ended. He was trapped. Trapped in the dead zone,